When it comes to Masters of the Universe Revelation, as I tried to talk about last night, I think honestly, and you can consider this a bit of a follow-up, I think Masters of the Universe Revelation, believe it or not, with all the backlash that it's getting, despite the fact that whether or not it is good, and the animation seems to probably back that up, but we'll have to see, because it's going to be one of those series on Netflix that gets dropped all at once. I mean, all 5 episodes of the first half will be dropped all at once. And the same could be said for the second half as well. But when I was talking about the fact that it's going to get some backlash and it might lead to something, what I was talking about was the fact that with all the backlash and here's the thing, we thought She-Ra and the Princesses of Power got a lot of backlash, but it lasted for like a couple of seasons. Didn't feel like it because the seasons would just automatically show up almost like within months of the other ending. But He-Man, the He-Man show, Masters of the Universe Revelation, is a little bit more different because She-Ra, even though she was hand-drawn 2D, a lot of it was Flash. A lot of it was done in Flash animation. Powerhouse animation is more along the lines of, if you saw how long it took them to get up to the 4th season for Castlevania on Netflix, then you can pretty much have a good idea that they're gonna, have to take their time, if you will, when it comes to Masters of the Universe Revelation. But to me, when you look back at the backlash it got, obviously we've not seen any potential follow-up to Princesses of Power. We haven't seen the talked about movie that they want to do on Netflix get mentioned as much anymore. And it's mainly because of the fact that I think Noelle Stevenson, the one that was behind it, probably, in my opinion, she probably had a discussion with Netflix and Dreamworks, and they're like, yeah, we're happy with the job you did, but yeah, we got too much negativity out of this, and maybe it's best that we don't pursue She-Ra anymore, and we just, let it get incorporated someplace else, maybe back into the He-Man portion of Masters of the Universe. So yeah, obviously we haven't heard much, like I said, much talk, on the potential of a return of the Princesses of Power, and I think that has to do with the negative backlash the series got despite its popularity. And there are studios that, believe it or not, realize that, hey, despite a show's popularity with an audience, mostly young kids, which this was kind of aimed at, as well as old and new fans of the original She-Ra, that they don't want any more negative publicity heading their way. So even despite the fact that, again, like I said, the show was probably good for them from a financial standpoint. And when I look at Masters of the Universe Revelation, I look at a show that the animation style is going to be different. It's going to take longer for episodes to be made, and probably a little longer for the second half of this potential 10 to 12 episode series, sequel, if you will, to be fully completed. And I think in that time, what's going to happen is, despite whether or not this show is good, people are going to basically still be very negative on it. They're still going to basically crap on it. They're still going to they'll basically give it its props. They'll say, yeah, the story was great and everything, animation along with it helped out, but to them it's going to be like, yeah, it was all good and everything, but still it was exactly what we felt it was going to be. It was going to be Teela based or Teela centric, and you're still trying to defend that it wasn't. And I think in the end, when you really think about it, like I said, I honestly think it's going to get some backlash. And I think what that backlash is going to do, especially from Netflix's point of view and Powerhouse Animation and even Mattel, who are behind this, what it's going to do is, it's going to get done to be like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't pursue this Revelation series anymore. I mean, even, like I said, even like with Princesses of Power, even if it's popular, I don't think Netflix and Powerhouse Animation or Mattel is going to want to pursue it anymore. Well, at least not this interpretation, because of all the backlash it brought. So, again, so honestly, I think what's going to happen, and I could be wrong about it, is, Netflix is going to make the announcement that they're going to cancel Masters of the Universe Revelation after all the episodes have been released. I think that's what's going to happen. Despite its popularity, despite maybe the toy sales that Mattel will get from it, they're going to probably say, look, we're going to cancel it. It did its job. It accomplished what it was set out to do, and that's it. We're not going to pursue it any longer. And I think the reason they're going to do that, and they're not going to straight out tell us why they're going to do it, but the reason they're going to do that, in my opinion, is because they basically want to avoid any more negativity. Again, which explains why they haven't pursued Princesses of Power, the Dreamworks version of She-Ra, any further. Despite talks of doing a movie and all that, they haven't pursued it any further because they don't want any more negative backlash. They basically distributed and aired and released the episodes, and that they signed up to release for the seasons that they got them for, and that was it. And despite the fact that the series is still on Netflix for people to catch up on, we haven't heard anything, like I said, any further about any future plans to follow up on it with a feature film or something on Netflix. We haven't heard anything. And again, I think the reason being is because they want to avoid any backlash that they got, with the show being on the air or being distributed by them, previously or recently. They want to avoid getting any more of that backlash again, because even Mattel, in a sense, was like, yeah, this isn't the She-Ra you promised us. This isn't the She-Ra Lauren Stevenson, Lauren Stevenson, I think that's her name, promised us. This is something completely different. This is basically what a lot of people said it was, in their eyes, and that was basically a fanfic come to life. And all Stevenson did was place She-Ra and her friends in the roles of her OC characters to, make her fanfic a reality. That's all she did. And like I said, I think because of the backlash it got, despite the popularity it had, despite it was on for a couple of seasons, not the kind of typical, seasons that you used to seeing with shows of any kind, but, the seasons are like every few months kind of deal. Despite all that, like I said, they haven't pursued anything ever since then, and you got to really think about that. Like, this was a popular show for them. It sold well merchandise-wise, but they're not pursuing it anymore, especially in kind of follow-up movie. And again, it's all about the backlash. And I think that's what's going to happen here with Revelation. Revelation's going to, come onto Netflix. It's going to, show or showcase all the episodes that Netflix ordered for this season, or agreed to, distribute, for this run, maybe this only seasonal run. And then I think after it's all said and done, after these 10 to 12 episodes, no matter, despite how many it's going to be, which again I'm assuming it's going to be 10 to 12, I'm almost guaranteed. I wouldn't say guaranteeing, and I'm not saying certain, but I can almost feel in my bones, if you will, just get this gut feeling that Netflix is going to, they're going to can it. They're going to cancel it after all the episodes are aired, because they don't want to deal with any more negative backlash. And I think what's going to happen is, if Netflix does acquire to do any more retcons, soft reboots, or full-on reboots of properties of the past, of the 80s and the 70s, 90s, early 2000s, even 60s or whatever, they're going to want to make sure, hey, if we're going to do this, especially if it's a show out of the 80s or the 90s, even the 2000s, they're going to probably want to make sure that, hey, if we're going to make this happen for you, if we're going to allow you to put this on our service, can you please make sure it's true to what the original was, because we don't need any more negative backlash. Because that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. They're going to get negative backlash. And, they don't want, and obviously they don't want that. They won't want that, hopefully, possibly in the future. And, when it comes to, shows, that are basically, being utilized to, basically focus on agendas like wokeness or cancel culture or SJWs, whatever. I know some people are going to look at, let's say, the new MLP series and movie and be like, well, what about that? And you could argue that the description of Sunny Star Scout kind of falls into that category, but it kind of falls into a category to where it's not necessarily a reboot. Basically it's a continuation. It takes place in the future, many years. It's a continuation, and it's basically her trying to get everybody to get back on the same page. Her being an activist is more of her trying to, bring things back to the way it was, because that's what helped keep the harmony in Equestria. Again, I know, calling her that is the wrong thing to do in the eyes of some, but it's not the way, but it's not, it's not going to basically be the way people are thinking it's going to be. It's going to hopefully stay true to what the original series was. And when you have one of the original people behind Friendship is Magic working on the movie, working on the series itself, then that's a good sign that, hey, Hasbro, unlike, let's say, Mattel, they don't want to, take any chances that they might, cause some kind of issue or some kind of backlash, on them, on Netflix, on Boulder Media. Then they're going to want to make sure that they get things right. They want to make sure things stay true to what they are, which is why, despite how you feel about Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy, the reason it's good, the reason it's so popular with people, and it basically Netflix knowing this, and you have people working on it that grew up with G1, grew up with Beast Wars, behind it, is because they know that if they mix in all these elements into a show that they know is going to be like an original idea, but pay homage, if you will, to previous incarnations, it's going to get over. It's going to get over in a big way, and it has. It definitely has, which is why it was announced recently that we're going to get a new Transformers movie in theaters next year called Rise of the Beast, which is going to bring in the Maximals and the Predacons. Basically, the thing is, if things are done right, like different interpretations, whether they pay, homage to original properties or the continuations, soft retcons, reboots, whatever, or just straight up continuations, but they take place in the future, if they're done right, and they paid respect to the original source material, people will be cool with it. You won't see much negativity. Because to them, they won't see a property like, let's say, MLP, Transformers, or whatever else being used to push the agenda of wokeness or cancel culture, SJWs or Karens or whatever. But when it comes to Masters of the Universe Revelation and previously, Princesses of Power, they see that. They see that, which is why, like I said, despite Princesses of Power being popular as it was, Netflix has yet to pursue any future continuation of it, movie-wise or whatever, because they don't want any more backlash. They don't want any more negativity, despite the show's popularity, if you will. And that's what I feel is going to happen with Masters of the Universe Revelation. That, it might become popular, the show might be good, but Netflix in the end is going to probably be like, yeah, we're not going to want to pursue this anymore because we don't need any more negativity. And before you know it, the show's probably going to end up being canceled. And, it's either going to be, sold off to somebody else to try to distribute, like Peacock or Paramount or Amazon Prime or even HBO Max, or it just might just cease to be. It's like, this is it. This is all you're going to get, and that's it. Because of the negative backlash. Because here's the thing. Netflix is known to, when it comes to the original productions, if you will, which is more licensed productions, they're known to sometimes hit it out of the park, and do a good job at doing so. I mean, for example, when they and Dreamworks did the new version of Voltron, despite the fact that they changed some things up about the characters, like Pip was made into a girl who was looking for her brother and all that. Despite that, and despite the fact that they waited till at least the third season or whatever to, allow Princess Aurora to be the pilot of the Blue Lion, despite some of the changes here and there, despite one of the pilots, I think was it 7 or something like a 7 or 7 I think, being LGBTQ, despite some of that, the show still remained true to what Voltron was. There was no hidden agendas of wokeness, SJW, Karens, cancel culture, stuff like that. It was true to what Voltron was. It was true to what made Voltron, a very popular franchise with a lot of people that grew up with it. With myself, with Rob the Wonderful, with Zara Nizarak, and in Clownfish TV. Everybody enjoyed it because it, despite some of the changes, there wasn't, it wasn't that big of a, it wasn't that big of a change, if you will, to, cause any negative backlash towards it. There wasn't. And that was a good thing. That was a good thing, if you will, because it still stayed true, to what the original series was. Despite, like I said, the changes in characters, gender-wise or, sexual orientation-wise, stuff like that, it still remained true to what Voltron was. And people loved it. When people cheer for what's going on with Castlevania, which is also done by Powerhouse Animation, they cheer it because it's basically taking what Castlevania was as a game series and making it, and basically taking some of the stories based around that and expanding on them. They're not, they might they might make a female character the lead here and there, but it doesn't mean it's going to take away from what the Castlevania series is basing itself on or adapting itself from. And that's what's made it very popular with a lot of people, because even though it's based on a video game series, it's based on certain portions of that video game series, despite some changes here and there. But here and there, like with certain female characters being the lead, certain male characters being co-lead, being the co-lead with them or co-starring role with them, despite some of those changes, it still remained very popular with people because, it wasn't trying to base itself in SJW-ness, Karen wokeness, or nothing like that. And thus like Voltron, which is also on Netflix, it's never gotten any negative backlash. But yet, you look at, She-Ra, Princesses of Power, you look at the new Masters of the Universe Revelation even before it's come out, and it's getting negative reactions, all because of the fact that, these shows, which are based on original IPs from the 80s, that were attempted to be, that, Mattel attempted to resurrect in the early 2000s, they're being used to basically spread the agenda of, SJW-ness, of wokeness, of Karen-ness, of LGBTQ, of cancel culture and all that. And it's not helping the series whatsoever. It's not helping Netflix consider, make the minds up in considering doing a follow-up special or movie on Princesses of Power. And it's definitely not going to help them in considering, hey, maybe we should continue the Masters of the Universe Revelation series with a spin-off focused on Teela or focused on Evil Lynn or whoever. Because apparently Kevin Smith wants to make this into the MCU. The Masters, he wants to make this like an MCU version of the Masters of the Universe of the He-Man franchise. It'll hurt. It'll basically hurt the consideration of continuing it, which will result, in my opinion, to them coming out and saying, "Hey, this is all you're going to get, and that's it. We're done." Because, like I said earlier, they don't want any of the negative reactions coming their way anymore. Coming their way anymore. They don't want any backlash anymore, if you will. So to me, I have a feeling what's going to happen is Netflix may basically pull the plug on this, before the second half comes out. Like, they'll be committed to putting the second half of Revelation out, but then but in the process, they're gonna pull the plug and say, look, we're not gonna, do any more series. We're not gonna continue the series for any more seasons. We're not gonna do spin-offs or anything like that because we don't need any more backlash because of what's going on here. So to me, it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be. I'll say this: July 23rd is going to be an interesting scenario, and then as we go from July 23rd to later on this year, which I guarantee by October, maybe October and November is when we'll get the second half. I can almost guarantee that the way this year is going to end for Kevin Smith and the Masters of the Universe Revelation will not be good, unless of course he finally comes out and admits the truth. Just comes out and says, yeah, look, it was about Teela. It was about Teela, and this is why we did it that way. Just come out and admit the truth, and maybe, just maybe, it might, Netflix might consider keeping it on. But right now, because of the negative backlash it's getting, I don't see it lasting but just this one season, which is again why I think Princesses of Power has not been pursued for any future motion picture follow-up or special follow-up on Netflix because of the negative reaction it got. But we'll see what happens. We shall see what happens. But let me know what your thoughts are. I do apologize if I rambled a little bit. I repeated myself. It is early. It's about 9:05 a.m. Pacific time right now. I'm still kind of waking up. I haven't had no coffee yet. But let me know what your thoughts are. Comment if you like. I'll talk to you all later. Like the video. Gets me more views when you like it. And I will talk to y'all later.